I was just reading an article in Psychology Today. There are all these, fun little memes about all the babies that are going to be born 9 months from now because everybody's locked in together, and so there's going to be another baby boom. But in fact, that's very unlikely to happen. In fact, according to this article, and they've been interviewing a lot of people, most people are having a lot less sex right now during the pandemic. And the reason why is obvious. It's kind of a buzzkill. Nobody's feeling particularly sexy when they are under, so much stress, anxiety, and deep, deep uncertainty. If anything, in fact, couples are fighting a lot more. And so in this video, I'm going to give you some really, really useful, really, really helpful tips that'll help you navigate those fights. And, one of the good things, and it is actually, there is a good thing about couples fighting, is one of the good things about fighting is that it gets stuff out that otherwise was trapped in there. And when you get it out, and if you could get to the bottom of it and resolve the fight successfully and reach some kind of understanding with each other, and maybe get to that point where you apologize, you understand each other better. You've been through something difficult together, and actually solidifies the relationship if you do it right. Of course, a bunch of unresolved fights just chip away at your relationship and eventually can destroy it. And I don't want that to happen to you. And we're all kind of struggling enough without adding that in. So I really hope that you'll take a minute and just go through the 3 steps that I outline here. They're really, really good. They're really, really useful. And the good news is you don't have to use all of them. Any one of them on its own can really give you a new perspective on how to more effectively get out of all the fighting and the bickering, particularly if you're having a bad fight, and get yourself back into a place where, it's fun and supportive, and who knows, maybe even get back to making love. So the first step is you really in a fight have to work from the outside in. And what I mean by that is that our brains function at 3 different levels. There's an animal level, and then there's an emotional level, and then there is our kind of intelligence and reasonable level. And what happens is when we get into a fight is we want to be the one who's being totally reasonable. Of course, the other one person is being completely unreasonable. But the truth about reason is reason itself is not that reasonable. What your logic center, your prefrontal cortex is really good at is finding very reasonable reasons to justify your crazy feelings. So you really can't start with the reasonable because the reasonable has been taken over and it's totally unreliable. Your reason, your logic, but everything I'm saying makes sense. And everything that he's saying doesn't make sense. Everything she's saying is insane. All of that stuff turns out to be bullshit. It really is bullshit. You're bullshitting yourself and you're good at it. They're bullshitting themselves and they're good at it. Okay? Because what's really happening is there's a genius mechanism involved that is justifying your emotions and your feelings. The first level is the animal level, the survival level. We have a deep feeling of unsafety when the person who we love, the person we trust, the person we've moved in together, maybe we're married, made commitments to spend forever together, and they're acting insane. They're doing these things that we really don't agree with and really piss us off, and we're really pissing them off. And that feels unsafe, like we've made this big decision to throw in our life with this person who's now suddenly unreliable in this moment. This feels incredibly unsafe and it freaks us out. That's why we get emotional and we have fights instead of having a nice, rational, calm conversation about that thing that we just kind of disagree on, right? We fight because we feel unsafe. That's really what's going on. And so that's the first thing you have to deal with, is reaching that point of safety. And that's something that you work on carefully. My friends Evan and Annie they do a lot of relationship coaching, and they're actually the ones who first turned me on to this idea that you've got to deal with these 3 levels. And their feeling is that to deal with the animal, this level of safety, you should touch first. But what I've found in working with a lot of couples is that when you try and touch your lover and they're really mad at you, they recoil. And then you feel like, oh, well, I just tried to put out an olive branch. I was being the good guy. And then it kind of just gives you one more resentment and more wood on the fire. So I think that there is really something to addressing verbally, putting it right there front and center, this idea of safety, hey, listen, we're the 2 people who are supposed to trust each other here. And I know deep down, We have each other's backs. And if something dangerous happened right now, if some guy with a gun walked in the room, I know that we'd be working on the same team. Like, we are safe together. And just really reestablish this kind of baseline that actually, no matter how bad it is, you guys are on the same side. Nobody's going to do anything too crazy. Nobody's leaving. Nobody's giving up. You're safe. And if you can just establish that and not say, well, if you feel that way, I'm leaving, that makes the whole thing completely unsafe, right? There's no recourse once you start pulling that shit, okay? Other than like going to your separate corners. And by the way, that's the next step for safety. If you can't dialogue your way to safety, just take time apart. Sometimes you really need to pause. Then there are different personality types, and some personality types really, really need time to sit and process before they can come back and have like constructive apologies and stuff. They can't do it in that moment that they're triggered. They need to calm down first. They need to get a feeling of safety first. They need to self-soothe first, away from you, because you are the stimulus that's freaking them out right now, right? And sometimes you need to be away from them because they're the source that's stimulating your freak out right now. And you can say, look, we're safe. We're not breaking up over this. Nobody's going to do anything crazy. I need a little time to just get calmed down before I can talk about this. There's no harm in that, and a lot of good comes from it. The next level is emotions, okay? You guys are having real emotions, and those emotions are what are driving what you think is reasonable. They're what's really going on. And I think what happens is a lot of times, particularly men, but certainly women too, a lot of times we think, well, it's the reasonable stuff that matters, and our emotions are emotional, which is the same thing as unreasonable. But actually, emotional and unreasonable are not the same at all. In fact, your emotions are very, very, very reasonable, and they're very, very, very real. Like when you feel sad because of some loss, like somebody you know was taken away or died, or you were fired at work and you're sad, that's real. There's nothing unreasonable about it. There's nothing irrational about it. It's real. It's what makes us human. It's why we fell in love in the first place. So you really need to acknowledge and validate that, you're hurt and you're angry and those things are real, and really try and dig into your own pain and your partner's pain and where these feelings come from and what they're sourced in. A lot of times, they did something that reminded you of that other thing they did that pissed you off. And that pissed you off so much because of something that happened, that you saw your father do to your mother that you never forgot, or whatever that is. But really try and do some therapy on yourself and each other in the most open and acknowledging way that your feelings are real, and they really are the point. I mean, the emotions actually are the reason that we're together, and they are the reason that we're fighting. So try and really deal with the rational stuff last, because all the rational stuff does is justify the reasons why you're angry, justify the reasons why you think your partner's a dum-dum, justify the reasons why you're right. Deal with the emotions first, get safe, then have a really open, empathic, honest, loving conversation about what you're feeling. And when your partner says, I'm feeling angry or sad, you can't say, well, you're wrong to feel that way, because that's bullshit. Their feeling is the real thing. That's the important thing we're dealing with. It doesn't matter whether there's a right or wrong reason behind it, but the feeling is the reason itself. That's the thing we really want to address. And once you've done that, once you've acknowledged these feelings and realized that they're real, now something magical happens, which is your rational brain, all that logic in the prefrontal cortex is now working for you. It's now working for you to find the reasons and the reasonableness for why you want to be together and work it out. And funny enough, all of a sudden, all those things that seemed irrational are now rational, and all the things that seemed rational before that you were rationalizing, you recognize are actually not that big a deal and not the only answer, not the only game in town. All right, that's all step one. But it's good. Just that model alone is good. Step two is what I call the apology stack. And the apology stack means, sometimes you guys are in a really complicated fight. And typically what happens is you start fighting about this, and then, you say, well, you did this, and now you're fighting about both of those things. And then they say, yeah, but that's because you think that. And now you've got three things. And suddenly you're fighting about a lot of different things all at once. And you want to fight about this and they want to fight about that. And the whole thing just becomes a giant clusterfuck, right? Now, there is some point sometimes where one of the partners will just give up and all they want is peace. They don't care what the price of peace is. And they're just like, look, I'm sorry. Okay, does that make it better? I'll just apologize for everything. I'm sorry. And the problem is, that's not a fucking apology. That's not an apology. That's just, I'm sick of fighting. I don't want to fight anymore. Let's sweep it under the rug, please. And that's problematic for a lot of reasons. Sometimes, by the way, couples have to do that, as an expedience, but that fight is coming back. Just know that you bookmarked it, not dealt with it. So that's not the best thing. What I recommend instead is apologize for what you can apologize for you when you can apologize for it. So there may just be some small component where, you said something that they misunderstood and then they got angry and said something to you and then you got angry for being angry with them. Maybe there's just some little piece in there that you can say, that thing that I said when I raised my voice and I started using that angry tone, I didn't have to do that. I could have just said, hey, that hurts. I could have spoken rationally then. That was on me. I messed up. I'm the one who raised my voice, and I'm sorry I did that. I shouldn't do that. You're the person I love. I don't want to raise my voice with you really ever. So I'm sorry I did that. That's the first apology in the apology stack. And then over time, you might be able to stack up the next one and the next one. Now, there's a real art to apologizing. And a great apology can go miles and miles and miles to build intimacy and really make your relationship better. And it ain't saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry is like bullshit. Anybody can say, I'm sorry. It's as close to meaningless as it could be, truly. A good apology is a more skillful thing. I'm going to do another separate video on how to do that. I will let you know, especially if you subscribe and you ring the little bell, you'll get an announcement when that comes out. And if it's already out when you're seeing this video, well, then I'm going to link to it right here. So the video on apology is coming, but just know this. When you say, I'm sorry, but, and then give all your justifications, that's not an apology at all. That's just a point of argument. I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but the reason I said that was because, that's not a fucking apology, okay? That's nothing resembling an apology. That's just more fighting. Nobody has given an apology at that point, and if you think you have, you're lying to yourself, okay? There's no apology there. Find something you really are sorry for that you can authentically apologize for, not fake, like a real element, one small element, and apologize just for that. And it starts to give you some wiggle room. It starts to loosen things up and gets you a little bit closer to a resolution. Maybe they can apologize for something, or maybe you discover that in the connection that begins to happen as they realize you are sorry for that thing, you're like, and you know what? I can also apologize for this other thing. And that begins the apology stack. And now you're getting closer and closer to re-engaging and having real intimacy. And when you do this successfully, you guys can find that actually the relationship is more important than the bullshit that you're fighting about. Even if you never agree, even if you'll just always have a difference on this point, and some things are really difficult to have a disagreement about. And in fact, so I have a paid course called Sexual Communication, but there's one module of that course that I'm making for free during this period because I think so many people are going to need it right now. And it's on talking about difficult things to talk about, because whether that's, breaking up or telling somebody you love them, or telling somebody I'd like to move in with you, or I'd like to move out. We've been moving too fast, or, something about sex, or something about something you don't like, or that hurt your feelings. There are so many hard things we have to talk about as couples. And this particular training, this workshop is just exquisite. And many people have told me it's the best thing I've ever created. But anyway, I'm going to make that free. You can get it here. I'll put a link here, and I'll put a link at the end of the video. Because I really want to put this out there as kind of my gift to people who are struggling and who are in love and really are in love, but are going through some difficult times right now. Anyway, the third step, which is maybe the best one in many ways, but you got to do it now. You got to do it right now, as soon as you're done watching this video, is talk to your lover and make pre-agreements before the fight. It's incredible how powerful this can be and how few couples do it. Make agreements before the fight. before two fighters get into a boxing ring or a mixed martial arts ring, they agree to the rules, and there's actually a referee there that makes sure that the rules are followed. Like, don't kick a man who's down, right? There are rules, or they would just kill each other. Same for you, okay? You guys are going to kill each other. Don't do that, all right? There's no reason to draw blood in every fight if you've got some ground rules. So have a really loving and compassionate conversation about the rules. And I suggest that one of the rules you have from the outset is no matter what happens, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how heated it gets, no matter how crazy it gets, nobody threatens to break up. Nobody threatens to leave. That threat is off the table. We can only talk about that kind of thing when we're calm. So that, maybe, look, the fight reveals something that you guys can never really recover from. Not everybody makes it, and not everybody's meant to. So sometimes there's somebody else out there that's better for you, and there's somebody out there that's better for your partner. That happens. But that conversation needs to happen in a loving way, in a quiet way, not in the midst of some crazy argument. And so people like to pull this out and threaten with it, but it's the biggest weapon, in the sack. Like, there should be no threats of leaving when you're fighting. Like, just agree to that and make some other agreements as well. Some ground rules, like, if it gets too crazy, we'll have a safe word. And the safe word might be, I don't know, Melania Trump. You can have any safe word you like. Something that's kind of, what's good about that is it's discordant, it's crazy, maybe it's a little funny, and it gets you out of the fight. And then that safe word means, hey, this has gone too far. I need a little break. You're hurting my feelings too much now. And then separate for a little while, and then you can come back later when you've calmed down. Okay, so maybe have a safe word. Another possible rule you might have is that when it starts to escalate and you're in a lot of pain, you do a little check-in with each other about, what level of pain are you at right now? Because a lot of times we think like, I'm the one in pain and you're the one who's putting me in pain. And sometimes if you check in with your partner, you're like, okay, how much pain are you in right now? And they, on a scale of 1 to 10, and they're like, I'm at an 8. And it surprises you. You're like, you're at an 8. I'm only at a 7. Okay, wait a second. Let's de-escalate this a little bit. Because honestly, you love each other and you have compassion for each other. And if you don't, well, then none of this stuff's going to work, right? But if you love each other, that's an amazingly powerful one. So set some rules around, what is and isn't okay when you're fighting before you fight. And you know what? When you do that, sometimes it avoids the fight altogether. Sometimes like those little reminders when you sit down and you're like determined not to break those rules, then your lover can bring up those rules. Sometimes that's enough to de-escalate the fight. So I hope that you'll try these things if you're finding yourself in trouble right now. Watch this video with your lover. Don't be stupid about it, okay? Watch it with them because, you want to be on the same team here. And then if you really want your relationship to go from this kind of difficult, always insecure, not quite meshing, you're going to have to talk about some difficult subjects, the things that hurt you, the things that you want, the things that you aspire to in the relationship, things that are not okay, that keep going on. Like, these things are like hard to talk about. And so I created this training on things that are hard to talk about. Like I said, it's normally part of one of my paid programs. I'm offering it as a gift because I think it's so crucial, and because so many people have told me that it's been such a huge benefit in their lives, and I don't want to hide the good stuff from people who aren't my customers, maybe will never be my customers because they can't afford to pay for products. Let's not let that get in the way right now. Click through, get that training, go through it when you have time. It's I made it as absolutely short as I could and cover what needs to be covered, but it is over an hour. But it has in it, this workshop has in it, real gold that can turn any relationship, I mean that, like any relationship that's like, that there's any level of commitment to on your part, it can take that relationship from frustrating and a source of anxiety and just never really sure whether it's working or not, that level of uncertainty, into a relationship that's full of trust, mutual support, love, fun, better sex, All that stuff happens when you really trust each other. And to really trust each other, you're going to have to get good at having hard conversations. So I really, really hope that just because it's free, you won't, what's the big deal? They say nobody takes anything seriously they don't pay for. But you're not paying for this, but I really want you to have it. And if you are in a relationship, I just really, really highly recommend that you go through it together. And I think it will be so powerful. So I hope you enjoy that, and I'll be talking to you again soon. Thanks.